So one of the agents we're coaching brought up something that I think is super common that I want to talk about in today's episode. And that is that this agent just feels, Ben, like, I just don't have enough leads. I don't have enough people to call. I get questions like that all the time on YouTube too. I'll post, I'll post a video maybe talking about for sale by owners or expired listings. And in the comment section, 100% of the time, it's like, well, I just don't get that many expireds in my market. And so who else am I supposed to call if I want business right now? And so it's a thing that I think most agents really, really struggle with. And what I think today's episode is going to turn into is probably like a lead generation masterclass, in that when we walk through what we're about to go through, I think people will look at this whole mindset of I don't have enough leads. They will look at that completely differently. At least that's my goal. And I'm sure you see this all the time too, right?
100%. Yeah. And I think really we'll just unpack this point by point, but in a nutshell, it's just really understanding your business as a whole. What is the long-term goal, and having a strategy. And if we set that up ahead of time and we really attack this the right way, you're never, ever, to your point, going to run out of people to talk to.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So let's first talk about this idea of agents taking the approach of lead generation and being one-dimensional. So here's I think the biggest mistake that I'm seeing that agents are making when it comes to lead generation is they say, okay, I need what they call now business. I get it. Most agents in the business need now business because they don't have a pipeline, and for a lot of different reasons. Maybe we'll get into that, maybe we won't. But most agents take a one-dimensional approach to lead generation. What does that mean? That means that if they're going to go after, let's just say, new for sale by owners and new expired listings, they might call them once or twice, not get in touch with them and say, well, I have no one to talk to. And from a coaching perspective, I'm not surprised. And so they have to take a multi-layered approach to creating conversations. The thing that I think a lot of agents misunderstand is that prospecting actually is a marketing activity. It's a marketing activity, meaning that the goal of prospecting is to find a homeowner who has the motivation to sell their home. That's the goal of prospecting. It's like you and I have always talked about. It's like sorting gumballs, right? It's like going to the gumball machine that's filled with blue gumballs with the promise of finding the red gumball. And it's like, nope, blue gumball, blue gumball, blue gumball, blue gumball. And so what is the point? The point is, if the goal of prospecting is really just a marketing, it's a marketing activity. They call it telemarketing for a reason, right? And so if that's the goal, we have to look at this and say, okay, we need a multi-layered approach if I'm going to have enough of these conversations to find somebody with motivation to sell a house so that I can get into the sales process. And the sales process picks up when you find somebody who has the motivation to sell. Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah. Just the simplest way I'm sitting here thinking about is a billboard, you're marketing to masses. Telemarketing, it's one-to-one, one at a time.
Yep, that's exactly right. So let's just look at the new, what I think is the most common when we talk about getting new expired listings and new for sale by owners. It's probably the most common lead pillar when it comes to prospecting that most agents think about. And so let's give some examples of what I mean by multi-layered approach. So if you're just going to, let's just say you get a new expired lead, and you're just going to pick up the phone at 8 a.m. and call that person once or twice, my belief, Ben, is that you shouldn't even make the call. If that's what you're going to do and think that that approach is going to get you enough conversations based on your competitors, it just won't. Save yourself the time, save yourself the emotional frustration that you're going to have when it comes to prospecting, if that is all you're going to do. Because what I'm about to walk through is what agents that have a lot of success actually do. So I can give agents some perspective because I think they don't know what their competitors are doing to actually convert an expired listing or for sale by owner. And I think that would be really helpful if we shared that. So a multi-layer approach, and I'll get your thoughts on this, Ben, in a second, would be, this is what people listening to the show, this is what your competitors are doing. So yes, they are calling for sure. Absolutely, that is part of the process. But they probably call a new expired or a new for sale by owner, call it 4 to 6 times on the first day that thing hits the market. They're going to show up and knock on that person's door. They're going to send that person a video text message. We call it the video sniper text. They're probably going to send that person some type of direct message via social media on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn, or all of the above. They're probably going to have something go through the mailbox so they can reach them via that methodology as well. They're probably going to send them a cold email as well. This is all going to take place over the first 3 to 5 days that a new expired listing comes into the marketplace. And so when you look at the multi-layer approach, any person with any type of marketing experience would tell you that it is about the depth at which you go from an attempts perspective that will determine whether or not you ever make contact or not. Versus, let's just say you've got 10 leads. If you were to attempt to contact all 10 leads once and go wide, it's not going to work very well. Versus having those 10 leads and attempting all 10 leads 10 different times versus with 10 different methodologies, the likelihood of making actual contact with that person goes up exponentially more. And so when we talk about a multi-layer approach, that's what I'm referring to. What are your thoughts on that first point?
How hungry are you is what comes to mind. Because you say you need now business. You say you want a check tomorrow, right? Well, why are the agents that are having a lot of closings each month doing 10 times the activity? Like, how bad do you want this?
Yeah.
What would you do if you had to get in touch with somebody? That's what just comes to mind. And the way that you outlined it, if I have to get a hold of somebody, I'm going to knock on their door. I'm going to try calling them. Let me try Facebook. Let me try this. And you sit there with a list of people to call. You don't get a hold of them. And then you just say, well, I guess this doesn't work, right? What would you do if you had to treat each one of those like, I have got to talk to this person? We talk so much about the success triangle. We have belief, we have effort, we have skill. Okay. We can give you all the skills, right? Right now, you're talking a lot about effort, but if you don't have the belief as well, layered on top of this, you're only going to be as weak or as strong as your weakest link in that success triangle. So I think it's helpful to kind of just with that mindset as we attack the skill and effort side that you're talking about with it all. That's really going to connect it all for you and get you those results.
That's a really good point. When you talk about the belief, because you brought something up that I didn't even think about, which is if an agent doesn't have the belief that they can actually get this property sold, like we're talking about true conviction. One agent says, I need to get a hold of this person because I know I can sell that house. I know that neighborhood. I know I can sell that house. It is insane that home failed to sell. I know I can sell it. I need to get a hold of this person. I can really help this person out. I know I can help them. Versus the agent who's, filled with fear, insecurity, doubt. I don't even know what I would even say to that person if I even got him on the phone. I don't know what I would do, Ben, if I even got to the home to demonstrate how I would even attempt to sell their home any differently than any other agent. I don't know that. I don't believe that. And so thus their effort shows up in a way that is very, very low. That's a really, really good point for the audience to take away. The other thing is, you're exactly right. If you had to get in touch with this person, what would you do? And if you are in the audience, to Ben's point, you'd sit there and come up with a lot more creative ideas than just call one time. I guarantee it. If you had to get in touch with this person, if there was the best expired listing lead that came up in your neighborhood, you knew the property, you knew the neighborhood, you were super confident. If you had to get in touch with that person, what would you do? And you'd come up with a lot more than I just brought up. Like another one that's really good is to go into the public record, search for the property owner, put them in Facebook, and see who you have friends in common. Reach out to the person that you know and see if you can get a personal referral. See if you can get a personal introduction. This is another approach that most agents don't take. Chances are, if you're selling real estate in the city in which you live, you probably are going to have someone in common. Not always. Not always. I can just see people in the comments section. Well, what if I don't? We just gave you, 5, 10 different ways to make contact. And so the point is going deep versus wide. If you're going to focus on what we would consider now business, an expired listing or for sale by owner, I'm going to make the argument that you go deep versus wide. Now, an approach we're going to talk about in a second might contradict that, and I'll tell you why in just a minute. But if you're going to go after now business, the downside of that, FSBOs and expireds, is the level of competition you're going to have. So if you're going to make those lead sources work, you're going to have to go deep, not wide. That means this. That means that rather than if you get 10, 20 expireds a week, rather than calling all of them a few times and then saying, well, I get what I get, select less of those leads and focus on a higher contact attempt approach over a longer period of time, and your results will be a lot better. That's what I would say when it comes to for sale by owners and expireds. Most agents I see, if I go shadow an agent, here's what I see. Maybe they get their leads from a Vulcan 7, which is where we recommend you get this type of data from. They load up the dialer at 8 a.m. They hit start, and whatever contacts they get from that activity is what they get for the day. I'm like, well, that's it? Well, yeah, what else should I be doing? Right? They're doing exactly what everybody else is doing. So I think you brought up a lot of good points.
I think too, just with the point you just made, this is going to be hopefully not derail people, or we're talking about not being one dimensional. If you've got to really go after somebody, and you're talking about contacts, and you are going after expireds, you're going to have less. But if you have the right ones, the goal is to get the listing, to get the appointment. So let's just not lose sight of that. Because if you made one call, you made one appointment, and you get one listing, do you care how many contacts you made? No, that's a second factor that we factor in, right? So if you really are going super deep on this and you're talking to the right people, you might not need to make 40 contacts every day, 50 contacts.
Yeah. No, it's another great point you bring up, because it's like when we talk about average contact rates and average conversions, that's why I have a lot of the agents that I coach, Ben, I'll ask them to say, listen, how many times, if you're going after these expired listings as part of your lead generation strategy, how many doors are you showing up on? Because we know with door knocking, just as an example, you don't have to have as many attempts, and you don't need as many conversations to generate one quality lead. Certainly when it comes to listing appointments set, door knocking is probably the most effective. Now, I get it's not the most efficient. I didn't say efficient. I said effective. To your point, here's the challenge I would give every agent that's listening to this. If you're going to go after expireds and for sale by owners, if you're going to do that, we talked about having a multi-layered approach, but I would challenge every single one of these agents to say, okay, go and make door knocking one of your focuses of your approach for the next 30 days and track it and see what happens. Go and track the number of conversations to lead generated, that ratio, and I bet you it's way better than phone call to lead generated. That'd be number one. Number two, then go track conversation lead to appointment set ratio. Bet you it's way better than 20%. That's what we see over the phone. Listen, I love the phone. I grew up on the phone. I'm a huge phone guy, right? I'm just saying having a multi-layer approach. Okay, So we talked about for sale by owners. We talked about the now business. The last point I want to make on now, and then I'm going to shift gears and talk about a different lead pillar in a second, is this mindset or understanding about what now means. You see, this is the other issue that we have with our industry is a lack of patience. I understand that most of the agents in this business have money problems, and the reason why they have money, or because they have money problems, they behave in a way that hurts them even more. It pushes them even further and further and further away from actually making money with the need and the desperation and all that stuff that comes with it. The problem with our industry is we are not in a now business. We're not in a now type of transactional industry. Selling real estate, as everybody already knows, is not like selling widgets or cell phones or even insurance or even mortgages for that matter. Because when I was in the mortgage business, Ben, you could call any homeowner that had a mortgage and potentially look at a refinance today. You could like make sales today off the first contact. Like that's what we do. You know what I mean? That's why real estate's so difficult to find a deal. It's not like insurance. Even when we had our insurance company, you could call anybody who owned a home or a car and look at redoing their insurance. If you could give them better coverage and lower their overall insurance exposure and cost, dude, you could get deals every day. We did get deals every single day. It was way, way easier. And so my whole point in this is that this whole idea of now business, you're not in an industry where you're getting paychecks, as you guys all know, like, okay, I got to get paid Friday. Dude, this is going to take a couple months and from an effort perspective that you're probably underestimating, quite frankly. It's probably going to take you 3 to 6 months of doing really difficult work for you to have any type of real consistency. And that 3 to 6 months is a price that I think, Ben, most agents say they're willing to make, but rarely do. I don't know if you see it differently, but I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, something we've kind of as a sidebar talk a lot about is how did you end up in this business? And I would argue, now I know there's going to be people that don't fall in this, but I would argue most people did not end up in real estate by choice. It was a second option. It was It was a alternative. Nobody said at 6 years old, I want to grow up and be a real estate agent, right? Nobody dresses up as a real estate agent for Halloween. I'm sorry. Right. Maybe a few people do as an adult, as a joke. But that's my point. How did you end up here? And now you're getting into a profession and you want to make a lot of money when other people in that can make this kind of money are going to school for 5, 6, 8, 10, 12 years.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of the first piece.
Yeah. And then they come out of school and then they have like on the job, like, training and they have to do certain things. I think you make a really good point. Most agents have the ambition to earn what an orthopedic surgeon earns. It's rare that you and I would bring on a coaching client and they say, yeah, I'm looking to make 50, 60 grand a year. You never hear that. No. It's always, I want to make 100, 150, 200, 250, 500,000, $1 million a year. Always these huge, 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 huge numbers. And then you say, okay, well, when you look at the type of people that make that type of income and you look at like how they behave and what they do, I think a lot of people have a lot of work to do with looking in the mirror,
Yeah.
So,
do we have some people that are young people that come in, we coach, and they hit the ground running and they do really, really well? Absolutely. But I would argue more often than not, people that get into real estate and they hit the ground running and they have a ton of success, it's because they paid their dues somewhere else, right? A different industry, life experience, whatever it is. And then we just give them the playbook, but they have the character traits, the beliefs, and everything else that they need to just soar. And they do.
That's what I just wrote down.
What's that?
Character traits. That's the difference. So not to get into that too much, but you're exactly right. It's like the people that hit the ground running, yeah, they come right into this thing, and their effort. I just had an agent on the podcast last week, Cade, and we spent, I don't know, a good 45 minutes going through his entire business to show people that are getting into this business or they're not earning multiple six figures a year. And one of the things he said is that he spends 6 hours per day in lead generation. So the question goes back to how we started off the episode. If you really wanted and you really had to make this thing work and you really had to succeed in this business, what would you do to make it work? You do everything you possibly could. But what do we see? We see people that do the bare bones minimum, and then say it doesn't work. One of the best quotes I've ever heard, I posted this on Instagram the other day, is, you can't not be consistent and say it doesn't work. It's like the best thing ever, right? It's like you can't try something a couple times and then say it doesn't work. Okay, so let's keep going. So we talked about FSBOs and expireds, having a multi-layer approach. The other thing I would tell people is that having a more diverse or having some diversity in your lead generation. It's like, we talk about the other part of being one-dimensional is, if you're just going after FSBOs and expires because you think it's the now business, there's a lot of challenges with that business model, a ton, right? We talked about the level of competition. There's a lot of other challenges with it as well. But if you don't have any, if you're not going to diversify, I said diversity, but diversify I guess it's the same thing, really. If you're not going to diversify your lead generation and you're just going to be in this one-dimensional world, and you don't have a lot of skills, you don't have a deep-rooted belief, and you don't have a lot of effort, again, I might argue why are we just going after the hardest lead sources to convert? Why wouldn't we diversify a bit? Why wouldn't we start to go after maybe some downsizers? Why wouldn't we go after maybe some properties that are in your market that are free and clear? Why wouldn't we go after some absentee owners? Why wouldn't we be focused on a just sold campaign or a bullseye prospecting campaign where there's zero competition? And you could find yourself getting into good conversations with homeowners that may want to sell their home easier, less friction, less rejection, less competition, and start to build out a pipeline so that in 3 to 6 months, you have really good listings at great price points in the areas in which you want to work without having to deal with all the downside of just being a one-dimensional business with just for sale by owners and expired. You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah. Because if we want to go after something that is now business, right? And we run out of people to call, if you do nothing, you're going to get nothing. Yeah. But if you layer on the next best thing, you have a high chance of getting some now business, even though it's not a long-term now-based business strategy.
That's right.
The effort, the contacts are going to outweigh not doing anything, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, okay, well, if you're going to spend maybe a couple hours going after for sale by owners and expireds, and you're going to tell me, Brandon, I need to get paid as fast as possible, and I don't have any listings, I don't have any clients, then I'm going to say, okay, just like the conversation that I shared with Cade, it's like, okay, if you're going to do this full time, you're really going to make this work, and you're going to work 8, 10, 12 hours a day for the first 3 years, what are we doing with the other 10 hours a day? I've always said you're either on an appointment trying to earn a client's business or you're looking for one.
Yeah.
But that's not what I see. Again, I shadow an agent. I put up the stopwatch and I say, okay, how much time are you spending generating in client acquisition, lead generation? And it's very, very little versus the time they spend doing God knows what, and I posted a video last week on doing the time audit, right? And saying, okay, well, let's track this for 30 days. How many hours per day on average are you spending actually generating high quality conversations? Most agents, when we do that exercise, we find out they're spending less than 1 hour per day, Ben. Less than 1 hour per day in proactive lead generation that would lead them to earning money. And then they have the audacity to say, dude, I'm doing everything possible I'm like, wait a minute, you're doing everything possible to make this work for your family? No. Let's give a really committed effort over the next 30 days. And people will be shocked when they start to really track this stuff. They say, wow, I wasn't even scratching the surface from an effort perspective. Because I think most agents vastly underestimate the amount of effort it takes just to be average in this business,
100%. And you look at people, well, you did it. You've shared this story many times. You go follow a top producer, you sit down with them, and you're like, all right, cool. Give it to me. What's the secret? I got to hear it. And he's like, yeah, sit there. You can watch for the next 6 hours and see what the secret is. And
That's
you're
right.
like, oh, wow. He's doing
and
what
you're sitting
I'm
there
doing.
waiting. You're waiting. When am I going to see it? Keep going.
No, you're spot on. You sit there, you watch, you listen, and you're like, man, he's not even that good. He's not even that good. I'm better than he is. But guess what? He's just doing it. And he's doing it every day without doubt. And I think we get into this business for the freedom, right? And something comes up and we get distracted, we do it, and we don't treat this like we're clocking in and we have to be there, right? I'm not like, I don't want to go down that tangent, but anyway, that's it. You just got to do the work. You got to show up. You have to be consistent. You go back to that financial video you showed of missing the top 10 days, the power of missing a day and what that has effect on income long-term. It's just insane.
Yeah. And I'll link to that video in the description, Ben, because that's a really good point. And you hit it. Knowing versus doing, again, I used to have agents shadow me all the time. I say, all right, well, you're not going to like what you see. Well, what do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? It's like, well, come on over, come hang out, and it's exactly what you said. It's the agent saying, well, I know you didn't do anything that I didn't know how to do. I'm like, I know that's not the point. You missed the point. I'm doing the things that you should be doing that you're not. That's the only difference. It's the disease of knowledge. It's like, well, I know that, so that can't be the secret. Well, I've heard of that. That can't be the secret. And we're searching for information where the results live in the doing. Mm-hmm. And that's where it's all being missed. And so, just to put a cherry on top of this thing, it's like, listen, first off, you have to take a multi-layer approach to lead generation, right? We've always said have 3 to 5 different sources of business. Don't just go after one source of business, because as market shifts, you're going to be in trouble. That's number one. Number two, take the same multi-layer approach to generating conversations. So whatever the sources of business are going to be, and hopefully you have 3 to 5 of those sources of business, you should then have 3 to 5 different ways of contacting those lead sources, not just one. It's not just text. It's not just direct mail. It's not just calling. It's not just door knocking. It's not just direct messaging. It's not just emailing. It's not just one. It's a multi approach to lead sources, and then a multi approach to generating those conversations. Ben, agents don't do those 2 things as a result of this episode. I believe they won't ever say, I don't have any people to talk to ever again. Any last thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll put a bow on kind of my belief point of, we come back to this success triangle that you talk about all the time, right? We talked about the 3: belief, skills, and effort. In the middle is accountability. That's right. So as you get started, a lot of times there's different layers of accountability. People come to us for the coach accountability, right? Through getting coaching, through being in our community, they get kind of that peer accountability, right? Which is another layer through our challenges and accountability groups, role play, all that. The last and the highest level of accountability is self-accountability. Those top producers, they don't need anybody to tell them to show up, right? The coach gives you these tactics, right? Brandon will lay it out step by step, exactly what to do. He'll build those beliefs with you through all of that. And then through all of that, over time, you get to that highest level where nobody has to tell you what to do ever again. You do it for yourself. And that's really where we see people they're unstoppable.